What's up, everyone? We hope you enjoyed the market's craziness with the interest rate decision today. And I'll tell you, tonight's video is an exciting one. What we're seeing in the market right now has not happened since 1987. So we're going to dive deep into some crazy stats that you won't even believe. So definitely make sure to stick with us for that. But of course, it is earnings day with good old Meta. So of course, we're going to jump into that as well. And then we're also going to cover exactly what happened with interest rates and Jerome Powell today. So I'll tell you, we have an awesome video. You better stick with us towards the end because we have a lot of great setups as well. But with that being said, Tom, let's crack right into today's episode.
Yeah, Mike, you can see that the overall market today was crazy, to say the least. We were actually really choppy, and we had that big FOMC interest rate decision where we had that big move on the SPY, but everybody is watching Meta here in after hours. And I will say, Meta is having a great move so far, running to the upside, holding up above $300 in a great way, and actually hitting highs of like $325 at the high here tonight. So, Mike, Meta earnings, everybody's been waiting for him this week. And man, Mike, going over to the CNBC article for him, it looks like they report an 11% jump in revenue, which is great. And as I look here through the article, I saw some really good stuff. So the EPS beat 2.98 versus 2.91 expected. The revenue came in at 32 billion versus 31.12 billion expected. So that was good. And if we actually go look at Thinkorswim, we can see that they beat on monthly active users, coming in at 3.03 billion. There's not many companies out there that have monthly active user numbers at the 3 billion mark. So I'll say that Meta, it really owns it as far as that goes, but it's good to see it still growing too. And getting into their revenue here, Mike, looking at it, I cannot believe it, but they actually had declined in 3 straight periods, which was amazing as far as their growth goes. So to see them finally breaking that and coming out with some growth here is amazing. And I know Apple's iOS privacy change has really hurt them, but they've actually been kind of getting through that a little bit better than some other companies like Snapchat, for example, which actually crashed with their earnings the other day. So, hey, it's looking pretty good for Meta right now in after hours, and I'm really happy to see them growing the way that they are.
There we go. So looking at Meta on the charts, they were running up in a great way for a second there, but honestly, Tom, they are just all over the place in after hours right now. Like every single time I refresh this chart, it's like going in like a different direction. So for this stock tomorrow, guys, there is opportunity, but you have to be adaptable. Like, you can't just see Meta up in after hours right now and being like, all right, I'm just going to automatically buy calls at market open. Because if you do that, there's a good chance you can get hit pretty hard. But for this one tomorrow, you have to ride that momentum. Of course, there's not too much like specific things I can say right now because, the earnings report just came out. But, if we see Meta, let's say, retesting highs of after hours tomorrow morning, you can ride it for some call momentum. But at the same time, if the stock's looking weak, there's nothing wrong with playing puts either.
Yeah, there's really not. Like, this stock could really start coming back down pretty hard, and if it gets back under $300, in my opinion, that might be a really good time to maybe look at some of those puts. Like you said, that 325 area overhead is also pretty big, and I know that there's going to be a lot of people out there maybe looking to ride this up if it continues tomorrow, and if we do break that high. I was actually looking at Bookmap here a lot in after hours, Mike, and I noticed that 350 overhead is an area where there's been a lot of sellers lined up there. So if we're able to break like 325 and even 330, you can see on Bookmap here, there's a lot of sellers there. If we're able to break out above some of these levels tomorrow, I think that we'll start to see a move back towards that 350 area, and I will really love to see that with Meta. They have not been at 350 in a long, long time, and man, it's so cool to be able to see X-ray vision like this in the stock market. You can really tell where those sellers are lined up there, and it'd be nice if we could start to break out and, get into that range, because there's like a 20-point range there where there's like not a bunch of sellers, where you can see like today, there was a ton of sellers around this like 320 area.
Exactly. So there's a massive wall of sellers right around 350. So if Meta does get close to that tomorrow, you have to keep that on watch. But Tom, now it's time for some of the exciting news of the day with these interest rates. So, as you all know by now, because we've been saying this so much this week, the Chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, hiked interest rates yet again today, and interest rates are now at their highest level in more than 22 years, which is very interesting. But what I thought was even more interesting, Tom, is that the Fed members are actually hinting at 2 more rate hikes this year, where the market is calling complete BS on that and saying that there won't be any rate hikes this year. So it looks like we're seeing the Fed officials in market pricing have a pretty strong disagreement, because we're not just talking about like 1 rate hike, we're talking about 2, and it's for this year.
Yeah, exactly. And one big thing to also keep in mind is that, Jerome Powell also said that they're doing they're obviously going to be making decisions like on a meeting by meeting basis. So like what's weird is that there's some Fed members that think that 2 rate hikes are on for the rest of the year. And then there's a lot of Fed members that think that there isn't. So that's what's interesting. We're going to maybe see that shift, towards the later part of this year. And as we start to see even more data coming out with CPI. Powell kept saying this. He kept saying that we're going to see two more CPI reports before the September meeting, and that's going to be pretty big because CPI reports, as we know, are pretty much gauging inflation and gives us a great idea like where we are right now in the economy and with the Fed's inflation goals. And you can see here that there's actually the market's kind of pricing in a pause. But like you said, there is a lot of members in the Feds that want to go towards that hike still. And you can see that the most likely scenario is November right now, with a 29.4% chance, at least what the market's pricing in for a hike. And then even December has like a 26% chance. But for the most part, at least it's sticking with a pause there through the end of this year.
Yep, very interesting. So we'll keep monitoring this over the weeks, as time goes by. But Tom, something that is really just turning a lot of heads in the market right now is the historic movement with the Dow. So, you could look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average or the DIA ETF, which I think is the best way to look at it. But long story short, the Dow has been up for 13 days straight, and this is the longest consecutive win streak that the Dow has had since 1987. So that is obviously truly historic, and what's kind of mind-blowing is that if the Dow rises again tomorrow, that'll be, 14 days in a row of up green, and that would be tied for the second best. The only other time the Dow was up 14 days in a row was 1897, not 1987, 1897, and at the time the Dow was trading for like $39 a share, and now it's sitting around like 35,000. So crazy stuff.
That really is crazy, Mike. $39 to $43 on the Dow back then. I cannot even believe that. Like, my grandparents were born in like 1929, and I can't believe it was only like $300 a share then. So, I mean, that stuff like really blows my mind there. And man, just to see that, to see this streak with the Dow going the way it is very mind-blowing. And, we keep talking about that transition out of some of those bigger tech stocks and into some of the value stocks. And I think that we're still seeing that. And even today, the Dow had a pretty good day overall. And it's just good to see the market, continuing to do what it is. Like looking at the Dow on the chart just continues to have these big green candles here. And, you love to see that whenever you're a bull, especially whenever you're a bull on some of these other stocks like Caterpillar, stocks like that. I know Caterpillar was red today, but I mean, look at Boeing even. Like they exploded with earnings, and man, that stock is just on fire today, up 8.72%.
Exactly. So if you're looking to follow this Dow action, check out ticker symbol DIA. If you want to bet against this trend, and if you think that, we're going to break this 13-day win streak, by all means, go for it. But if you're in the other camp where you think we might make a new record of going for maybe 15 winning days in a row, by all means, go for that as well. But DIA is the ticker you will want to follow for that. But Tom, on another note, while we're talking about, Dow and, NASDAQ and the Russell is actually seeing some pretty nice inflows. So Tom and I have been talking about a rotation been for, the past couple days and the past couple weeks. And long story short, what we're seeing right now is a lot of good flow go into these smaller cap stocks. That, a lot of them are in the Russell 2000. And what we're seeing now is asset managers and leveraged funds net futures flow increase more and more month after month. And this has been this way since basically a year from now. So long story short, we're seeing a lot of good and positive flow with some of these smaller cap stocks. So keep a close eye on IWM as well, as that follows, the Russell 2000. I know a lot of people, when they look at the market overall, they just trade SPY or QQQ, but there's nothing wrong with trading the Russell, which is IWM, or the Dow, which is DIA.
Yeah, exactly. I think that those are really good ways to go. And honestly, like looking at the Russell right now, it's like running up into a big resistance. Like there's a pretty big resistance right around $200 even here. And with these growth stocks moving the way that they are, I would think that there's a chance that IWM could start to move out to the upside a little bit more. And, a lot of people, they don't really know like what kind of stocks are really out there, like in, the Russell, Mike. And, just some are like Macy's, KBH, KB Home, Asana. There's like a lot of stocks like that out there. Asana is like a really good example of like one of those growth stocks that, is like really low right now. But at the same time is like started to come up recently and is kind of looking like it might try to break out above some of these resistances here. So I really like that with the Russell, Mike. And as we always talk about flow, it's so important to see what the big money's doing, where the flow is. And man, this is just such a good example of like, we're starting to finally see a resurgence. And we haven't seen this in a long time, since the beginning of 2022 when that selling started. So it's definitely a good thing to look at. And, like you said, specifically more for the growth stocks.
Exactly. So good stuff there, Tom. But let's jump right into some setups for tomorrow. And I'll tell you, one stock I'm watching pretty closely is Microsoft. And I'm actually looking at this one for an earnings continuation play to the downside. If it breaks below like $333 a share, right below that support, I would love to ride this one to the downside and, play some puts on it.
Yeah, me too. I think Microsoft's definitely going to be a good play to the downside for the next few days, especially if those support breaks. And I've been really watching it to the downside the past few days as well. And, going on the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm actually going to watch Boeing for an earning continuation play to the upside. They were up 8.72% today, really holding the Dow up. I mean, that was a great move today, Mike, by Boeing. For anybody who didn't know, yes, they are in the Dow. Go ahead and look it up. But if they end up breaking 233 tomorrow, it'll be a nice move to the upside. I'll definitely be watching them for a continuation. And they've been one of those stocks lately that has been very surprising to me with how they're breaking out on that daily chart. Like, that's just such a strong move.
Yeah, that stock really set the tone today. I was watching that thing run up basically all day long, and I'll tell you, Tom, it's kind of rare to see Boeing move like this.
Yeah, it is. I will say I was actually buying some calls last week on the live stream as they started to like break out of a trend line, and I sold as they got towards like 215, 214. But man, I should have held through the earnings, it looks like. But man, what a move by them. Great move. And I can't wait. I hope that they keep this up. It's been a long time coming for them. They've been down in the dumps for a while.
No doubt. All right, another stock I'm watching, Tom, is one that's really crazy, and I don't know how many people can handle this one, but it is that crazy $2 stock Tilray. And long story short, this is like a marijuana company. They reported earnings today, and they actually had a pretty good reaction from yesterday's close, but a lot of the price action intraday was just kind of choppy. Either way, this stock is extremely crazy, and it moves in mind-blowing ways. As we look at the chart, it has had some insane runs. And long story short, if this thing can break above like 211 tomorrow, I think it has potential to get in that like sort of crazy mode. I would love to see this one like retest like the 270 level and maybe even $3. But again, it's a crazy stock, high risk, high reward. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, it had a good move with earnings. I mean, I'll say, Mike, it was very surprising to me to see them moving up the way that they were. I hope that it keeps going, and hey, good for Tilray here. I hope that the marijuana sector starts to pick up a little bit. They have been brutal the past few years. I hate to say it, but if you guys have been buying it at all, I mean, it's almost impossible to not be down on the shares right now. So it's one of those brutal stocks, Mike. But I think over the long term, they will start to come back a little bit better. And, talking about like longer term plays here, I've been looking at Citigroup for a longer term play back to the upside on the daily chart. And they are actually in a pretty good like wedge pattern here on the daily. And I will be watching them for a possible move back up and out of this recent range, maybe back up to like $48.50 or even $50 if we get a good enough move. So Citigroup's been kind of, stuck down here, but today was a pretty good recovery back. I liked it. If they're able to break above like 47.80, then I'll go ahead and look at calls. But man, these banks, Mike, they've been all over the place. I hope they can start to get back up and out of this range that they've been stuck in up here.
You know it. Alrighty, well, it's now time for those momentum plays. And Tom, the first one is a little bit too familiar for you, but it's actually Boeing.
Yeah, it really is. Boeing, I love them, though. Great play to the upside for tomorrow. Go ahead and watch them to break above 233. That's a nice resistance there. If they break that in pre-market, then watch 235. I think that would be a next good level to watch for.
All right, and then with the next one, we have Teladoc, also to the upside.
TDOC, nice one here. Go ahead and make them break above 29.20, just above that high of day.
And with the last one, we have TLT, and we need both directions.
I was actually really happy you had TLT on the list, Mike. I was watching them today whenever Powell spoke, and at first I was like, wow, this is a nice move up. Powell's kind of helping us. Maybe this will be a nice uptrend for TLT. We'll start to move back up, and then we started falling back, and I was like, oh, what the hell happened? But go ahead and make them break under $100.90 if you want to look at puts to the downside. If you want to play this up, make it break above 101.50. There's a pretty nice resistance there overhead.
Perfect. So as you guys heard, Tom, we have that downside level on TLT. If it breaks below that, we're watching it for puts. We have the upside level for calls. And then don't forget about Teladoc and Boeing with their upside levels as well. But it is now time for the big money $1.6 million trade of the day, and we are looking at MDT. MDT is like a medical devices company, and long story short, someone dumped $1.6 million into the 95 strike call options that expire on September 15th of 2023. This stock moves in like kind of a slow way. I like the direction of this setup, especially considering it's held up very well over like the whole year. I will say, Tom, though, what I am a little bit concerned about is the strike price, which is a 95 strike. If you were to play this, I think it'd be better to get shares or at least get a little bit closer to the money.
Yeah, I do too. That 95 strike is a little bit out there, and it actually is right at resistance. So it almost makes me feel like somebody could be using that as like covered calls, or they're just shorting them, maybe. But what I'll say is that with the current price action and the current setup on this stock, I mean, it is looking great to the upside, in my opinion. Like, we've been bouncing off some key supports down here around 85 to 86, holding these areas very well, and we're just pushing up into this resistance around 92. If we're able to break that, I think that we could easily get up and like retest 95. So we'll have to see how it goes. I definitely like maybe the 90 strike or the 91 strike a lot better, but hey, it's definitely on fire right now, and it's been down here for a long time, and I feel like it's finally starting to get on that like nice upwards trend here finally.
Exactly. So keep a close eye on this one over the next couple weeks. Anytime you have someone dump $1.6 million into a trade like this, you don't want to ignore it. But Tom, for tomorrow, we just got Meta. We had Meta report their earnings. The interest rate decision is now behind us, and it is now time for the market to have some good moves. So what would you say your game plan is going into tomorrow, given the current environment?
Yeah, so obviously, first things first, I'm going to be keeping an eye on good old Meta. Like, I think that'll be a fun stock tomorrow, maybe for like a post earnings play. You don't have to, hold it for a long time. Maybe if you see like some good momentum, like a couple minutes after open, and it's starting to like break out above like 315, that could maybe be a good play up to like 320, maybe even a retest of 325. If you're really wanting to be safe, maybe make it break 325. That could be a good area too. We saw on the book map earlier that that's going to be a big area on Meta. There's been a lot of sellers stacked up around there. So 325, 330, then 350. So I like it, Mike. Meta's going to be fun. And, I even think that some of these other parts of the market, like GLD, some of those metals could still be good to play tomorrow, too. They ended up closing green, and I was happy to see that. I know we've been talking about GDX a lot lately, too, but it's just important to be disciplined right now because we're still kind of digesting what happened today. Honestly, we're very close to where we started. Like the SPYs break even on the day. We might as well have not even had the event happen.
Except for that crazy volatility towards the end of the day. Look at the market right there. It's like soared up and then just like crashed down and then came back up again. It's kind of like a roller coaster. But yeah, that's how these types of events are though. Either way, if you are not already subscribed to the channel, destroy that subscribe button. When you destroy that subscribe button, you'll see our videos recommended to you more often. It takes us a long time to make these videos each day. We go through a ton of different data and news and all that stuff to bring you guys a nice, simple, easy to watch recap every single night. So definitely make sure to subscribe. Also, we want to give a huge shout out to today's member of the day, TOL, in the Stocked Up Discord. We really appreciate your activity, and it's awesome having you in the chat. Besides that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and let's have an amazing end to the week.